Hey guys, it's TF Nut. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm back from my hiatus of creating content for a new action figure review. This is going to be of the brand new Bandai Tamashii Nations SH Figuarts Spider-Man No Way Home Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Finally, we have some kind of Tobey Maguire Spider-Man figure in recent years here. It's a good thing that No Way Home is pretty much the reason why we're getting some now. We have this figure that I just got from Hobby Genki. Next month, hopefully, the Andrew Garfield version should be released sometime soon. We'll also have that new version of the Tom Holland one. And then I think later this year, we're going to get that Marvel Legends 3 pack with all three Peters there. But I'm glad to finally have this one here in my collection. I just want to go ahead and start talking about it. This packaging here is rather nice. I'll zoom in, take a look at it real quick. It says Bandai Namco top right there. Figure in the box with the accessories there. It does have a quick read up of SH Figuarts right there if you want to pause and read that, if you can even see that. Figure looks nice in the box. I'm really digging the patterning, almost like it looks like, you know, this specific suit here. And you have that specific spider logo too. You also get that Tamashii Nations quality sticker, an image of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man there. It also says, you know, all the stuff I basically said earlier, as well as Marvel, the Tamashii Nations logo, and the Bandai logo there as well. So on this side here, pretty much the same thing that we got on the front when it comes to where it says SH Figuarts and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. But you look down there and you have a small image of the figure posed right there. On the other side, it's going to be very similar. Just this time the text is smaller and we have a full body image, well, almost a full body image of the figure just standing right there. The top of the packaging is just going to say SH Figuarts and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, kind of plain. The bottom here, kind of the same thing, but this also has the support website, I believe, as well as a barcode in case you need it. I'll pause right there. And then we look on the back, and it's a little bit sparse when it comes to how many photos they decided to take, but you can get an idea of some of the posing and accessories that this figure is going to come with. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, SH Figuarts, and all that. Also does say simple style and heroic action, ages 15 and up. Let's go ahead and get this figure out of the packaging. And here's the figure out of the packaging. I'm digging it so far after playing around with it for a few minutes. I think they've made some decisions with this figure that's a little bit weird. Don't know if I love everything going on with this figure, but it is really nice regardless. Let's go ahead and take a look at the accessories, then we'll take a closer look at the figure. Quick image of the different accessories this figure comes with. This is going to be a bit of a long review, I can tell, but the figure did come packaged with the masked head on as well as fists. As you can see, we have 5 extra sets of hands. We also have 2 different heads, 1 extra neck piece, so that way you can see some of the neck is exposed without the mask on. You also have that loose mask and some web effects in different sizes. What we do also have is an instruction manual right here. As you can see, it does say Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Just some images of, you know, how to operate some of the parts here, some of the different accessories included, places where paint may rub, as well as some extra stuff on the back as well, and how to do some of that stuff too. So let's try to run through. I do take long with some of these accessory portions, but because we have, you know, pretty much symmetrical hands for each set, we'll go over these really quick. Each hand is basically going to have, you know, the patterning in the red there, as you can see with those details. It's not super prominent, but you can tell there, you know, there is detail. And the web lines protruding with some silver paint. It's a little bit sloppy, I'll admit. You can see a little bit of red instead of silver there. You gotta look hard to find it though, but it is a little disappointing looking at it right now. It's not the end of the world though. My fingers are so big, as you can see how that looks. You also get whipping hands. I think the color for everything, you know, the darker red, not really super dark red, but you know, the silver and the webbing, also all of that looks really well done. I think there's a little bit of silver on the knuckle there. You also have the wall crawling hands there, looking really good. You can see the detail in the palms too. I really like how that looks. You do have these web grip hands for holding the different web accessories and you know, web swinging. That's cool. Digging that a lot as well. And last but not least, for the hands, the more relaxed hands that double as mask holding hands, and they didn't even bother to paint the web details on the inside of the fingers, which is a little disappointing, but I can kind of see why. I think they didn't want any of that silver to bleed off onto this mask, even though it's going to have silver already. As you can see, because there's so much silver on here, it kind of looks like the red is a little bit darker. Maybe it's also has a little bit of shading in here to make it look a little bit dirty. But I think the actual sculpting of this unmasked piece here, it is really nice. You can see the eyes right there with the white and black. Silver paint is pretty clean, with how well they can do it, because there's a bunch of wrinkles. They got it pretty consistent with some of the web line sculpts and paint. A little bit iffy right there, I just noticed. But you really have to nitpick and look hard to find some flaws here. So that's what the inside of that looks like. Let's take a look at the unmasked stern head here. I think the actual sculpt is pretty good. And some of those like original images I think that were taken on a cell phone a couple months ago don't really do this justice. But it looks pretty good here. I think the actual printing might be a tiny bit off, though. At least the right eye looks like it's shifting over to the left a little bit. Same thing with the left eye, too. But, in different angles, like, I don't know. It's kind of losing the Toby a little bit and from the side. But, like, head on, this is Toby. That's insane. I think it does a pretty good job of, Toby doesn't look too much older compared to when he did in the original, Sam Raimi films. So I think this works pretty well, not only as an older Toby, but you can make this work as a younger Toby too, honestly. I'm sure customizers are out there are going to have a field day with making young Toby head sculpts. I think his hair was longer in those films, so there's that. But the hair, it looks like it's just one tone of brown, which still looks nice. And it does have a little bit of an aftershave, just a little bit of stubble, like ever so slightly in there. Lip color too. I think a little bit of brown is going onto the skin, but you really gotta look close to see that. Ear sculpt's nice. You can see where skin tone actually looks a little bit lighter right here compared to the rest of the face, but it's not too noticeable. And then they do have some red and some silver lines protruding there for the web pieces. This head comes off. You can see that it looks a little bit crooked there. You should be able to pop this head on. The smiling head also looks like Toby, but something's a little bit off. I think it's the bottom lip that looks just kind of weird, but it's actually not as bad as they originally showed off. I'm glad we have this extra head. Unfortunately, Andrew's not going to come with any, but it's only a tiny bit weird to me in person. I mean, on camera it kind of does look weird, but in person it really doesn't look that weird to me also. I think the eyebrows look a little bit faded when it comes to the printing, though. Then I don't even notice if there are eyebrows on. Yeah, they're really subtle when it comes to the eyebrows on there. His hair is messier on this head. You can see the back of the hair has more cowlicks there. Looks like I feel like some of the paint's fading a little bit of lighter brown where it should be, I guess, one tone. But it's not bad looking at all. I don't think so. Looking pretty good. Okay, web accessories. They're all in a translucent clear plastic, not much paint going on, but we have these smaller pieces, as you can see, with a little bit of like some waviness, just to give it some detail. Backing out a little bit. You have these more medium, these were still pretty long, but more medium-sized pieces. They have a large, I guess, it's kind of gross to say, but like glob at the end here. Not really, but you also have all the spinning detail down here and then here. And again, I don't actually know if I mentioned this, but you probably saw in the instruction manual. These will clip into the wrists, and then you just put the hands on, so it stays secured. And this is just a web line here. It doesn't attach to the wrist. As you can see, it does have a bend, an angle at the end here. And then this is more of like, you can hold it straight up. I guess you can hold it here too, maybe, so it can be angled a bit. So that's cool. You can see all the waves and, spins going on. I'm not exactly sure what words I'm wanting to use, but you can see there is detail in there. Maybe a little bit of like some frost detail would look, or paint would look nice, but still pretty nice. It's not bendy, so just be careful. Okay, with that finally out of the way, let's take a look at the actual details of this figure. And I believe the suit's design in No Way Home was a little bit different than the original Raimi film stuff, but this it just takes me back, man. This does hit the nostalgia spot. This is undeniably the Tobey Maguire version, Sam Raimi version of Spider-Man. I'm really digging it. I think the eyes maybe should be a tiny bit bigger. Not entirely sure, but it still looks really good. The white and black outline there going together really well. Lots of great patterning, as you can see in the red. They individually sculpted that, you can tell. And that is not easy to do. That is really sick. They also have all the protruding web lines sculpted on here too. And painted nicely. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of flaws right now when it comes to how that looks. I never realized there was just an open space here. I guess that's how it's supposed to look with the sculpt, I guess. But yeah, the hands might have a little bit of some silver missing on the webbing, but it does not look like the mask has that problem. Just maybe a tiny bit right here where my fingernail is, but I can still see some silver in there. That is fantastic. I'm digging that a lot. Now, as you can see, this whole piece, when you want to pull it off, the neck will come out. I've tried to pull on the head. It's a little tighter, so I wouldn't mess with trying to pull this head off. Just want to let you guys know that. But you can see, very similar to the head, the neck also has pretty much the whole suit. You can see all that red, patterning going on with the texturing, and some silver paint in those webs protruding. A little bit of, I'm saying like almost microscopic levels of splotching of the silver going into the red, but not that bad. You, again, have to look really hard. The only reason why I'm mentioning it is just if I happen to notice it. Does it bug me? A tiny bit, just because this was around 90 to 95 bucks after shipping with Hobby Genki, but this is not easy to do, so I can forgive it just a little bit. I can look far away and it doesn't, it's not noticeable, then that's fine. Like if there was a silver splotch right here, you'd be able to tell. Actually, far away, I can kind of see a little bit of red on the blue there. Let's keep going with the actual, chest. This spider logo sculpted on there looks fantastic. Look at that. That is sick. All these long web lines protruding downward, too. You move the ball joint, upper waist, the ribs really around a bit, and you can see some more of that sculpting going on there to kind of make it look like it's continuous. Same thing if you crunch it forward. Yeah, they did a good job with that, I think. The spider logo there, you can see it gets a little bit longer, and then push it down a little bit like that. It kind of looks a little weird, but again, I think they did as best of a job as they could with how that can be limiting, and look a little bit weird with how the ball joints are done. So I don't mind that. The darker blue looking really nice. I think they have a little bit of almost like a shading, almost like dry brushing maybe. Not really dry brushing, but it does look like there's a little bit of shading in parts of the dark blue. But some of it is, I don't know how consistent it is. Feels like this is a little bit of a lighter blue in that joint. And then the rest, like right here, is a little bit darker, making it look dirty towards the armpits. Kind of the same thing with the legs. There's like this shading here, but they don't, it's not consistent. It's just mostly the way that this blue looks, the shading just stops. So that's a little weird as well. I would have continued, if they had added a little bit more shading around here, I think it would have helped. But, you look at the shoulders and, the arms, all that looks good too. They even continued with how this ball joint works. They even continued a little bit there with the sculpting. The joints, of course, it's not going to have too much, but that's fine to me. I feel like there should be the separation of red and blue here, but I could be wrong. Also, I don't have any previous Tobey Maguire Spider-Man figures right now to compare, unfortunately. Not from Toy Biz or Hasbro. At least right now. I can't find some of the ones I used to have, so we unfortunately will not be able to do a comparison. Maybe in the future when the Hasbro one comes out in that 3-pack. But you can see, patterning on the bicep, and then the forearm. You can see some of that red and silver there too, and you can see how those fists look. The the wrist pegs and the wrist look a little bit weird just because it's a smooth red compared to the rest of the textured red and silver going on there. But that's kind of the flaws of action figure making, unfortunately. Here's how that waist piece looks. I think I already talked about the stomach. Looking pretty good. Not many complaints. It's real, again, not easy to get these really small web lines with the sculpting there, perfect with the silver paint, and I think they did as best a job they could. You can see a little bit of it is missing in some areas. Now, one thing I think looks a little bit weird is when we get to the legs. Well, first of all, this upper chest piece kind of drapes over the stomach just a little bit to where the chest looks a tiny bit too big, but that's not too big of a deal. The legs, though, we back out a little bit, and I think it starts to look a little bit weird. Not only like, I don't know, it just feels like something's weird. Parts of the legs, I think like the calves look a little skinny. I think that the way that these are done, these swivels sticking out a bit, I think that makes it look a little big and beefy just a little bit. Again, I talked about the shading here, and then these hip pieces like the rotate. We've gotten these before with different figures, from different series from SH Figuarts, but these pieces are just a little too loose. I know I see the point of them, but they're a little distracting. They break up the crotch a little bit. I wish they kind of fixed it to be all one piece. You can see, I don't really know what else they could have done. I think some Dragon Ball figures have made it to where it's not like this anymore. So, I don't know. They could have just done something a little bit different, if you ask me. It's not the end of the world for me. Look a little bit closer at them. All the nice pattern, at least, you get that in the blue. Even though the shading isn't the greatest. You can also see the shading stops a little bit at the knees, too. But again, the patterning, that is not easy to do on individual figure. I'm sure maybe they figured out a way they could have done it without individual sculpting, but it still is like really accurate to how it's supposed to look. And then you get down to the calves and the shins, and you can see hopefully you don't hear the lawnmower out there. You could see all that silver as well as the red there, and they have these like pieces around the ankles to not break up the sculpt a little bit. They stick out a little bit to me. And there's not that much silver in there. I can see why, because it would have been chewed up. But the range of motion still works. You can still tell there's a metal peg there, unfortunately. But I actually don't mind how they did it here. So it's actually pretty sick. So I think some of the aesthetics and proportions are a tiny bit weird, at least in the legs. But the upper torso is fine, I think. I think the shoulders might be just a tiny bit too small. But other than that, I really can't think of, like, detail-wise, what's wrong with this. The paint's a tiny, just ever so tiny bit sloppy, just because it's not easy to do how they did the web lines here. For articulation, we have ball joints at the head and the neck going into the torso. This allows for all different types of range of motion. It swivels at the actual head. It can tilt, forward and back, and then same thing, as you can see, the same basic concept. Lots and lots of range of motion in the head. We do have this separate sculpted piece here for the butterfly joint, and it looks like have a peg going into the actual an actual socket going in there. So when you move it up and down all the way around, you can still see some gappage, but it continues to sculpt there. We do have arms that go all the way around. They shift up a little bit too because of how this is done. We have a little bit of an arm swivel going on in here, just ever so slightly, but you're mostly going to get that arm swivel here at the actual area where it's sculpted. Double jointed elbows. You might want to bend the bottom one just a little bit more, and you'll get pretty decent bend there. I think a tiny bit of a swivel here, maybe a tiny bit there too. But we also have standard wrist articulation, swiveling all the way around, hinging up and down here too. Ball jointed to waist. The range of motion, you also have it actually at the waist, the hips. So the actual back, it's better because of this, but actually it's not too bad. It could be maybe a tiny bit better. Forward is pretty great. You can see this separate sculpted piece over that as well. And then swiveling actually works really well here. You don't get much swiveling at the actual hips, so you're mostly going to get swiveling here. And then side-to-side motion. It does not have a drop-down system, but it kicks out like this. It can kick back like that. Pretty much perfect splits, and there is some continued patterns going on here. Almost perfect splits. Upper thigh swivel a little bit tight on mine. You do have double-jointed knees. I think maybe a tiny bit of moving right here, but not much. Wouldn't move this around, actually. Swiveling here at the ankle. That's how down it can get, even with that plastic piece in the way. Doesn't really hinder it at all. Up, maybe it gets hindered a tiny bit, but really not much. Ankle rocker there, and then really nice toe hinge. So even though SH Figuarts run pretty short compared to other 6-inch lines, this one is pretty short already, even compared to some SH Figuarts. We're getting about 15 to 15.5 centimeters, maybe getting pretty close to 16. That's going to put this like right at 6 inches, maybe just a little bit under. So I do think that this is a tiny bit short than it should be. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Tobey Maguire is shorter than I think he is. But it is going to be a little bit shorter than SH Figuarts. Deadpool. Over on the right, that's the Marvel Legends integrated suit. Spider-Man's going to be a little bit shorter, but they're getting pretty close to the same height. Far left, Retro Wave Spidey's going to be much taller. Far right, the first ever Black Series Mando is going to be a tiny bit taller. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this figure. I think Tamashii Nations did a very good job. There's some things I don't think are perfect about it. I think the way that they did some of the sculpting for the articulation is a little bit weird, at least what they did with the hips and the legs. To me, it's just a tiny bit weird. A little bit of inconsistent shading, and I think there's just a little bit of some imperfections in some of the web lines, but those are really hard to get done right, so I'm not going to fault them too much for it. The rest of it, the sculpting on this is superb, fantastic. Lots of great details have been captured very accurately here. Great articulation. It poses around very well, and as of now, the joints are nice quality, and they don't feel too loose, but they feel loose enough to where you can get it into really nice poses. Hopefully there's no paint rubbing for my figure, at least in the future. We'll have to wait and see. A ton of awesome accessories. You can get this figure to do a lot of great stuff. Really glad that we were able to get some masked heads, at least for this particular figure, even though I can see some customizers doing their own stuff. It's just a really fun figure. For me personally, I might be a little bit of bias because I love the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. This really does hit the nostalgia spot, and I do think it's just a very nice figure overall. It is a pretty expensive figure. It's a web exclusive, so if you're getting it on domestic websites, it's going to be close to $100. I got mine from Hobby Genki. I think it's sold out there. I'll leave some links down in the description below where you can get this figure, hopefully still. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below what you think about the figure, what you think about the review. Leave a like, share amongst your friends. Follow me on Instagram for more content over there, and I'll see you guys later.